Welcome to the final module we have for the School for the Living Volume 1. And we're going to go deeper into spiral dynamics and integral theory a bit here so that you can see, how far you can go here and how far this thing goes. Because in reality, we have just scratched the surface. So I'm going to show you several slides that are demonstrating spiral dynamics. And the reason I'm going to show you several slides is because each one of them has a different way of showing things. And for wherever you're at right now, I imagine they'll land differently. I know I can personally teach off of each slide um, a little differently because of what's on it. So you'll see what I mean here in a moment. And I like this one because it's really big picture on spiral dynamics. Every single human being goes through these stages. It's predictable, surprisingly predictable. And a lot of research was done on this. And this was the idea that spiral dynamics came from a lot of research from a guy named Claire Graves. And you can find his books and to get a better idea. In fact, a lot of people who have built on his work, if you go back and read the original work, you'll find that he was a lot simpler than how it ends up being described by others. And there's all sorts of debate out there over who's teaching it right, which is kind of funny to me. But every individual goes through this. You start with the instinctive, and then go to animistic, dominant, authoritarian, achievist, communitarian, systemic, then holistic. So you basically, as a baby, you start here, and it's just all about survival and instinct, and then you start moving through this. And I'll get a little bit more on each one of these. One things I want you to notice real quick is that there is a theme about what's happening here on the left side, and there's a theme over here on the right side. So the theme on the left side is it's very individual based, and on the right side it's very community based, right? And so it's more about uh, the greater good, I guess you could say. Over here on the right, on the left, is more about the individual expression, and which is really great to see because there's all sorts of debate over whether somebody is right or wrong based on where they actually fall in the spiral dynamics. And if you're looking at it through this lens, then people who are really in support of authoritarianism or are very capitalistic over here would be achievists would be on the capitalist side. um, they I see people who are in either one of these as simply in a stage of development. And it doesn't mean that they're going to evolve out of that stage during this lifetime, but these stages are passed down through generations as well. Yes, we all start here, but depending on where your parents were, probably impacted where you started your development in your 20s. And if you're doing it consciously, you can move through them a lot more quickly as well, and you can stabilize each one. One thing I want you to note is you want to stabilize. If you don't stabilize a stage, so say you don't actually fully develop as an achievist, but you move into a communitarian, then what can happen is there'll be gaps in your game and you're going to have to go back and visit that. And I'll talk about what that looks like. So another graphic, it's a lot more busy. You'll notice some of these graphics get really busy because it's saying a lot. And so whereas this particular slide is a spiraling up, like starting here at the bottom, this one is showing a spiraling down. So like at the lowest of the stages of development is up here and the highest is down here. And I like this because it basically demonstrates how there's a flow. There's a flow between them. And uh it's not, none of these things are just who you are or how you are. It changes over time. And one thing I want you to note here that I like on this slide is they say express self systems over here on the left. On the right is sacrifice self systems. So when we look at the original research by Claire Graves, he really talks about how the pendulum swings from one side to the other. So it swings from self-expression to self-sacrifice. And self-expression is more than just using your voice. It's about behaving in a way that is in your own self-interest. Um, and is very I oriented. Whereas sacrificing self system is all about, yes, I have my needs, I have my desires, but I will sacrifice that. I will sacrifice my voice. I may not speak up. I may keep my thoughts to myself. I will stay put in a job that I may not be happy with because I think it's for the greater good, so on and so forth. So, a lot of times what we'll witness is somebody has a major life transition when they're basically when they cross the threshold from one to another, right? And so when everyone in your life is expecting you to be someone who is self-sacrificing, and then you start becoming much more individual oriented, people may think you're being selfish, or you're breaking their expectations, so they may get upset. Which you may have experienced some of that during this course. I am a really big fan. The longer I spend in personal development, is how slow can we go, which allows us to have a lot more grace as we move through these instead of being so jarring for ourselves and for those around us. So uh, up here we have beige, which is the automatic, instinctive, survival. And then we move into purple, which is animistic, tribalistic. So we are safe. It goes from I am safe to we are safe. And this happens as a little kid, like, 2 years old type of thing. And then one thing I've yet to mention is all these uh, stages of development our culture exists in to different degrees. So we can look at a culture at large and say, oh, they are in this stage of development. And so if we look at, I think I have a slide here that breaks down the percentages, but basically the greatest amount of people in the United States, anyway, the United States tends to fall into the blue values. And I'll get into that. But people move into purple, which is we are safe. It's a little more community oriented, very family oriented, which then moves into red values, which is very power oriented, egocentric, exploitive, I control. This is where a lot of the warrior archetype is built, is here during the red phase of development, and then moves into the blue, which is much more traditional. This is the blue meme. These are called memes as well, is where you're going to find government and religion. So people who fall into this stage of development just do as they're told, really. They don't really need to be explained. They don't ask a lot of questions. It doesn't need to be explained why we're going to do something. The attitude of this is how we do it because this is how we've always done it, that those people fall into this blue mean, these blue values. And so the people who are here these are the type of people you find working in government. People that are working in church tend to have these, and it's not always absolute, but it tends to be the case. And the people who really think highly of these institutions and just do what they say, they fall here. But eventually they're going to evolve into a set of orange values where we find the materialist and the achiever, and we get back to a very I oriented individual. This is where scientists live. Okay. So, scientists, a lot of times, or science, I won't say scientists. So, because most, as we've seen over the last few years, scientists actually they look a lot more blue than they do orange, but science itself is a very orange value. It's very materialistic, in that, we want to be able to measure things and see things and validate. This is also where capitalism comes in hand. If somebody who is hyper successful financially, a lot of times they are fully in these orange values and have developed themselves really well there. The strive and drive is here, and then uh, and you've probably seen this, you may have experienced this. I find a lot of people who are in any of my programs and who are studying with us fall in somewhere in the between orange and green. And and uh and it makes sense. And some people are green and moving into yellow, but and by the way, there's no judgment on where anyone's at on any of this stuff. This is just where we're at, and there's no way to you can go faster through it, but I wouldn't say you don't go faster through it by trying to go fast. You go faster through it by really stabilizing that stage of development. Like I said before, if you don't stabilize it, you're gonna have to go back. If you try to skip some things, you're gonna have to go back and develop yourself in those areas. So a lot of people move from a lot of the orange values, the individualization, into green values. Very relativistic, sociocentric. This is where a lot of the green movement comes from. Is like, oh, we need to worry about the ecosystem and we're all one and all that kind of stuff. And uh, a lot of times the when someone gets to the green meme, they kind of look back at their old self and go, "Wow, I was really selfish." Um, and a lot of people who live here, a lot of times, what I'm noticing in society a lot right now is a lot of people are they've kind of skipped through the orange values because the orange values were really heavy with their parents who were really successful, and then you have this they didn't really develop themselves here, and so they're struggling. They're in the green values, but they're struggling because they really didn't spend enough time developing themselves in the orange values as an achiever. And so another danger I want us to be really looking at is a lot of when I say danger is something to watch out for is where we want to get humanity. We want humanity to get over here to the yellow values at a minimum, and because that's where we reach tier two consciousness. But I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, and so when we go from green, we can pass into tier two consciousness, which is different than tier one. So green values and up to these beige values are are usually not integrated, right? Because so the green value people who are in the green values tend to judge the people in the orange values, and you'll see a lot of judgment between people who are in different values. The orange values judge the people in the blue, and everyone's judging each other instead of seeing that each person who's represented in culture is necessary. And those people are just going through their own stages of development. When someone crosses over to tier two consciousness, they basically integrate all the former values, and the judgment falls away, and they can see things as a whole system, including the stages of consciousness. And so, yellow values is very systems oriented, integrated, and you see the word here, flex flow. So very adaptable, and can basically pull on benefits from each one of these values and becomes very adaptive between values in order to uh, achieve more for the self and for the greater good. Both are accomplished here. And then yellow values tends to evolve into turquoise values, which is um, someone who sees the whole view as an organism and can see things that are moving in a they can see the connections without needing to over intellectualize it. And then from the turquoise that goes to coral values, which is basically we don't really uh, there's not enough people in the coral values for them to even give us uh, the characteristics to look for. So I hope this slide helps a bit there. And here's just another one. Is you can pause this if you want and read through this. because what I like about this slide is that it gets a little more into the details of what each one of these things are. Oh yeah, the danger is I'm glad I'm here on this one. The danger I which I didn't cover. The first one is that watch out for the judgment because that's only going to slow you down if you're judging the other tiers. But the other thing is a lot of people who are in the green mean the relativistic, respond to human needs, affiliative, situational, consensual, fluid. Basically, uh, a lot of times people who are in the green meme get into this moralistic relativism and they get stuck in it, and that just means that they think that morals are subjective and not objective. And so I won't be digging too much into that because that we'll be digging into natural law if we do that. That's a different course for another time. But one of the dangers that what you'll witness with a lot of people who are in the green meme, you'll know who I'm talking about. There's a lot of the hippie crowd falls into this category, is they start falling back into the purple actually. So remember that these things alternate. So it goes beige, purple, red. So beige and red have more in common than beige and purple. And blue and green have more in common, which means that green and purple have more in common than green and orange. So hopefully I didn't lose you there. But um, what we have here is in this green meme is a lot of times people become very relativistic and also very consensual and situational. And what ends up happening is they end up falling into more of an animistic um, place where you'll see them practicing a lot of tribal rituals, and you'll also notice that on the spiritual side they'll be falling more into a lot of the tribal rituals, and also you'll notice that they just become more tribal in nature, and so there's which I think we're seeing a lot of in our culture right now is a lot of tribalism. And I say that there's a danger in it is because if somebody who's in the green meme starts slipping into more of the purple, and I won't get into too many details because I've got opinions on it. I'm trying to leave as many opinions out and really just present the information here. But the if someone is in the green meme and they start adopting too much of what's going on in purple, they'll never actually develop into yellow. So they'll get stuck in that for the rest of their life. Um, and as I said before, if we get the more people who cross this line into yellow, the better. Another slide that demonstrates what we're looking at. I like this one visually just because it's like this is beige. This is like an infant development, or this would be a nomadic tribe in nomadic tribe in the jungle might be like a red, but culturally, there's not really many beige out there, maybe purple and red, but individually we all go through it. So infancy, grew up a little more, become purple, red. You got these little so like the purple's like very interested in what I like about this is magic, right? There's a god of thunder, there's gods for everything that they see in the world that they can't explain. So it's a very magical place. So going back to what was happening in the green meme, a lot of people in the green meme start getting very magical as well. And then that leads into more of uh the power dynamic. There's kings and queens, and then blue, which is more uh, order, right and wrong, religion, government, orange, science, business, green, and you can kind of see how the each one represents visually what I've been talking about here. This person in the yellow is integrating. They're taking all of it and putting it together. And yeah, so I already started diving into this a little bit, which is the break between green and yellow is a difference between uh, first and second tier of consciousness. And over here, it's listed as first substance, if I can talk, subsistence, first subsistence, and then second being is how these are named as tiers in this particular model. Um, and I already talked about green before yellow. If green doesn't fall prey to the illusions of purple. Already mentioned this too. Tier one, so anything that is green and before tends to be a lot of judgment between the different sets of values and memes. And then tier two, consciousness is much more integral and integrates all these ideas. So, as much as I'd like to say that you or I have developed our entire being into these stages, actually apply. It's not as pretty as this, right? So when as I'm presenting it and as we're looking at it, it may seem like, oh yeah, we're going to lay this over the ACOL map and the many lines of development, and we have our internal experience, our body, culture, and environment, and we're steadily developing all of these things together, and there is synergy between them. um, but the reality is they're all being developed at different rates. So someone may be developing themselves at a very more advanced rate with the internal eye, the internal experience, but their body is not, right? And the same thing may be happening for culture. So all an environment, these things all are advancing at different rates for different people and for the culture at large as well. And this is why this course I designed the way I did, is because a lot of times people are underdeveloped in one area, which would then support another area much more fully. So, just to give you a little bit deeper view into how all this works, as well, this is not, even this is a little too neat uh, compared to reality. So each one of these lines, so inside of each one of these quadrants, there are many lines of development. So we divided it up in this course, and Ken Wilber divided it up for us with the ACOL map into four big areas. But within each one of those areas is technically an infinite amount of lines to be developed. And so even inside of one quadrant, there could be 100 different lines of development, and inside of, you may be really developed in this line but not as developed in this line. And to give you an example of this, we're going to look at 10 different lines of development used in the integral psychograph assessment. And so basically there are there are all this is listing 10 different lines of development used for the internal self. So in that one quadrant, this is listing 10 of them. And there's more than 10, but these are the 10 that seem to be the most important. So you may be um, teal or turquoise. Teal and yellow are interchangeable, by the way, depending on who you're asking. They're going to describe it a little differently. But you may be teal as a cognitive, but your moral may be red, or your emotional may be orange or green. And so, uh, all these different lines of development are going through. So it could look like this, where it's like high, low, low, high. And so we have cognitive, interpersonal, self identity, moral, values, needs, aesthetic, psychosexual, emotional, and somatic. Um, and so when we look at all these different lines of development, there are a lot of things that get to be developed just inside of the internal self. So this applies to all the others. So if we thought we figured it all out, like I said, we're just scratching the surface. So where do we go from here? I'm going to start here with a quote from Werner Erhard, who was one of the founders of EST, that then became Landmark Education, which I participated in quite a bit, found it incredibly useful. Um, so, especially in the cognitive development side of things. But the a lot of things that come out of that is very brilliant. And so this is what Werner Erhard has to say about responsibility. And this is where we get to go is we get to take responsibility for each line of development that we're experiencing in this life. So I'll read this aloud. Responsibility begins with the willingness to take the stand that one is cause in the matter of one's life. It is a declaration, not an assertion. That is, it is a context from which one chooses to live. Responsibility is not burden, fault, praise, blame, credit, shame, or guilt. In responsibility, there is no evaluation of good or bad, right or wrong. There is simply what's so, and the stand you choose to take on what's so. Being responsible starts with willingness to deal with the situation from the view of life that you are the generator of what you do, what you have, and what you are. That is not the truth. It is a place to stand. No one can make you responsible, nor can you impose responsibility on another. It is a grace you give yourself, an empowering context that leaves you with a say in the matter of life. So, um, some people may want to print this off and put it up. It's a good reminder. It's a very empowering statement. Um, one of my favorite parts of this um, is that that is not the truth. It is a place to stand, and uh, uh, it's a grace that you give yourself. This is about giving yourself grace. A lot of times when people are thinking about responsibility, they're thinking about blame or praise or fault or credit or any of these things. Um, and what it really is it's a grace you give yourself so that you can continue to improve as a human being. So I'll leave you with this. Um, Whenever I ask myself, am I done yet? Or did I find the truth? The word further comes up for me. And so anytime you imagine that you've found the truth or you've gotten to the end, I encourage you to simply go further. Thank you for joining me for this course.